O projeto Pretzel foi concebido em uma parceria entre a Associação dos Amigos da Universidade Hebraica de Jerusalém e a Sinagoga Beth-El. Conta com o apoio institucional do Clube Hebraico e do Museu Judaico de São Paulo. O projeto Pretzel é um conjunto de lives de pessoas com biografias interessantes que estão fazendo a diferença no mundo em suas áreas de atuação. São profissionais destacados com histórias de vida interessantes que compartilham exemplos de inspiração. Os convidados, bem como os entrevistadores, na sua grande maioria, são integrantes de diferentes comunidades judaicas, sejam elas aqui no Brasil ou no exterior. Estamos muito satisfeitos e felizes com o resultado dessa parceria e orgulhosos da qualidade do conteúdo que estamos oferecendo neste projeto para a nossa comunidade. Quando encontramos judeus em qualquer lugar do mundo, há uma conexão imediata, um senso de unidade. Esse profundo senso de conexão torna a civilização judaica única, nem melhor e nem pior, mas sim singular. Entre os povos do mundo, nenhum judeu é meramente um indivíduo. Somos um coletivo, uma parte de algo maior que nós mesmos. Esperamos que vocês possam desfrutar dessas lives e depois de assistirem, indiquem, compartilhem com outras pessoas. Desejamos que esses momentos sejam repletos de inspiração, conhecimento e sabedoria. Desfrutem.
So, hi Natalie, hi Nir. I'm happy to be here with you guys today. I'm going to start with the question, what is overcoming for you?
Starting with Georgie. Thank you, Nir. It's so nice to be here. And it's so nice to make this connection, which is so different from connecting people from fashion and Judaism together in this conversation. So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. And I think overcoming for me, it's very much about like stairs in life, learning. It's a learning process. So I think it is an everyday lesson that we have to take about hard things and the things that we cannot control and things that we have to understand as lessons for life. And that's about the way that I see overcoming in my life.
Yes. I would say innovate. It's like, for me, the most exciting part of my world, I would say, is about innovation and bringing new things to life, anything from new ventures, new collections, new ideas, and this is something you suffer most when you do innovative stuff, but it's more exciting. So maybe this is my overcoming.
I like it. Let's dig deeper into the past, because you both have very strong family histories. So I want to know about you guys. Tell us a little bit about your family history, sources and values. You want to go first, Natalie?
Ladies first.
Sure, thank you. I'm very connected to my grandfather, which is Samuel Klein. He is a Holocaust survivor. He came to Brazil. He had only my father as a son. And he started selling things door to door, very, very poor. He lost almost all his family. So he came to Brazil, and in a short period, I would say 20 years, he became one of the most prominent persons in retail in Brazil. So he always was connected with that. The success was not connected to having wealth or having lots of money. By the end of his life, he passed away 4 years ago with 94. He left us so much things connected to values and to religion and to the ethical principles of life. That's for me the most valuable things he left for us. So he was this Holocaust survivor. He came to Brazil without any family or money. And that's a beautiful story, that he really became a very successful person. And not just because of the success he made having or owning Casas Bahia, which is the biggest retail in South America, but he really was into helping people. And his job was to transform people's lives. And that's what makes me very, very connected to the way that he sees the world. He got through the worst in life, and even though he decided to trust people and to have confidence in people. So he created in Brazil one thing that it's very well known here, which is payment installments. And he created that based on truth back in 1960. So it makes me very proud of my story, and I tend to bring with me every little detail that he left us. And I have his glasses on my office, always to remind me that I have to keep have the strong thought that I have to look the world through his eyes, the things that he saw. So that's something that really connects me with our history, with our values, with the religion, and with our people community.
Thank you, Natalie. How about you, Nick? I want to hear your story now.
Yeah, funny enough, from one side of my family, they're also Holocaust survivor in a sense, but they ran away to Israel, weird enough. So it's like, they went to Poland and then Israel, of course. And one side of my family is from the founding members of Tel Aviv a few years ago. So, and the other side is like fifth generation. So I'm very Israeli in a sense, for good and for bad, I guess. And most of my father comes from the background of the industrial, on the industry side of consumer goods. So I very much grew up on the basis of retail, and international companies. The company he was managing for long years was Keter Plastic, which is the leading company worldwide for plastic consumer goods. So I grew up on the basis of customer and product and innovation very much. And of course, growing up in a very young country, I think was very influential about myself personally. I will dive into my personal background, I guess. So I grew up, born and raised in Tel Aviv. I did my army service, was a paratrooper, an officer, discharged, and then I decided I want to learn something interesting. I was very naive at the time, but I studied my BA and LLB in law and business. During my second year, I understood I'm not going to be such a good student, so I better search for other, areas of interest, I would say gently. And then what happened is that I established my own first startup, like a manpower agency, trying to bring more like a household needs and stuff. It was very, we didn't know anything about it, but it was very successful at the times. We sold it, kept on working. I used to work for Deloitte as a head consultant there, managing the innovation consultancy. So it's very, very different than fashion. I guess we're going to get to fashion, soon. And then I did my MBA in University of Chicago, managed a few private equity funds. So my path was very nerdy and very, very financial, innovation, startups, and all the stuff that is very, very much, it's not Israeli invention for sure, but it's very common in Israel that you get into in the field of startups and innovation.
So where you got the ray light that took you off to this and made you to go to the very fun fashion world?
It's funny when I meet people from the fashion industry, say, why did you do it? It's a tough life, and everybody thinks in fashion it's very unique. So guys, it's the same. You need to earn more than you lose. It's pretty much the same in everywhere. Because my previous position was I had a project in New York of urban agriculture and crazy stuff like this. I said, what's the relation? Urban agriculture in New York, growing lettuce on rooftops, and then fashion. And I think that the one to blame is actually my wife. She's the one to blame, like a few of the things in my life, I guess. And my wife, Sharon, she's a fashion designer. And she studied here in Schenker College in Israel, which happened to be one of the top 10 schools in the world for fashion design. And she was lucky and talented enough, I guess, during her studies to do internship for Alber Elbaz for Lanvin. And then her eyes opened and she said, okay, this is what I want to do when I'm going to be grown up. And then she moved to work for Alexander McQueen when he was still alive, and worked with him on the last few collections before he passed away. And when we came back to Israel after a few years in London, I told her, we gave birth. It's not she gave birth, we gave birth. It's very liberal. And we had our older daughter. And what happened is Kate Middleton got married with Alexander McQueen dress. And Sharon became super frustrated that instead of doing the most fanciest dress in the world, she's changing diapers. And she said, I must go back to design. And I was managing some private equity fund. And I said, find something to do. And I read a piece in the newspaper about Mesquite and about Ruth Dayan. And she's 94. Go quickly and meet her before something will happen to her. Funny enough, she went there, and for 2 years they drove all over the country. I'm giving the long answer, but I'm sorry. So they were driving all over the country, meeting the suppliers, the employees, everybody was still alive. And during the time, the idea was, let's not do something like Mesquite. Let's do Mesquite. If the French can do brand revival, the Italian, the British, etc., why won't we? And I still helped from the side because for me, it looks ridiculous to work with my wife. Sounds like too much of an adventure anyway. And then we joined forces with Steph Wertheimer, who was our partner for the first few years. And he said, if I'm joining in, you're going to manage the company. I said, I don't know anything about fashion. It's the same concept, and I'm not going to work with my wife also. But he said, if you're not going to join, I'm not investing in you guys. It's okay, I'm going to join. And he says, time fly by, and we are 7 years on the go. So it was a long answer, I'm sorry. But it's definitely, and funny enough, and this is my last remark, when people ask me, okay, what do you think it is about this fashion world? And I said, guys, it's pretty much the same. There are two things which are very different. It's more glamorous. Working in a banking industry, in the financial industry, nobody cares about you. You're in your, office kind of a thing, and you're not the glamorous part or the exciting about the thing that you feel you're doing something very unique. You're working with artists less, I guess. So this is very much different. And there are a few other differences. I will share it, I guess. But how did you get into the fashion? I'm ruining your questions, I guess. But,
let's go to the questions. Nathalie, what is a dream you still want to fulfill in your life? A goal that you want to achieve?
I think I have a lot. I don't think I fulfilled a lot yet, but most of them, I think I did. Raising a family, doing my work that I'm very proud of, working with something that I love, living in Brazil that I love. But I think I have small dreams. They are very, I don't have like these huge dreams because I think you can be very frustrated if you follow one dream in your life. So I tend to slice them and make them achievable. So if my dream is to spend one day in the farm, that's going to be it. So it's nice because you feel like you're achieving the things that you want. I don't like long-term plans because it's very hard to achieve. And we really, especially with this time that we're living now, everything changes so fast. So I imagine if you have a dream to live with your family at the beach house. So everything has changed. You really cannot, but there's some opportunities that they show up, and then you have to recharge and redesign your dreams. But I think my main goal in life, it's when I go from this earth, I have the feeling that I got my surrounding is better than I left. That's it. My surrounding. And I think that's pretty much it. That's my biggest goal in life.
That's beautiful, Nathalie. How about you, Anir? What's your dream? Do you still have something to fulfill, a goal to achieve?
I think we didn't do nothing yet. So there's so many things to fulfill, and dreams are all over the place. But if I would have to choose one, and again, I very much agree with what Nathalie said, it's tons of dreams, and the most important one are related to the health and to the family and to the more important parts in life. And especially in these times of the world, we all can easily relate. But I think that, talking about the fashion and the innovation and the, entrepreneurship part of it, I think my biggest dream is I think there are a lot of, I would say gently, there is a lot of very, amazing artists and craftsmanship and designers in Israel. And, being and this is one of the challenges in the fashion thing, which is not the high tech and stuff which you can easily connect with other countries. But a lot of talent in Israel. And my dream is to be able to, to export the level of talent and design level and craft and art, and to show the world beautiful Israel, but in a real beautiful way, and not only not such an amazing stuff you can sometimes see in TV. And here it's, we're all biased, I guess, but in, showing Israel in the most beautiful part is definitely one of my Zionist dream. And again, from a business perspective and everything, but I think this is the only way to make change, is to make something sustainable. And I think, and to my dream is to be able to export and to expand the level of talent beyond the level, the geography of Israel, and to show the world different Israel, something which is, we sometimes branded as Tel Aviv, because Tel Aviv is branded much nicely than Israel sometimes. But there is so much talent, and most of them are artists that they cannot push it behind the borders sometimes. So this is one of the dreams, is to help.
You got me very emotional now, because I'm a big Zionist. My family, my grandmother worked her entire life to raise money for Israel. So this has been like my family's journey is always this. And working in fashion in Brazil for 15 years, and I went to Israel, and they said I had this feeling, what is the fashion from Israel? And I share your dream. I think I'm not randomly here. I think we can really connect in the future and spread this message to the world. And
funny enough, again, sorry for giving the long answers, but funny enough, one of the things that when I started Mesquite, I said, and I don't know, I'm not a fashionista, I'm not a designer. So I said, I'm coming like a blank paper. And I said, what is the competitive advantage that Israel has, compared to other countries? Or how can you come from Israel and compete with Zara? They're too good. You cannot compete them. Not even the Gucci, whoever. They're too strong, too big. Coming from Israel, it should be something more unique. And I said, let's see what is the unique parts of Israel. And everything, by the way, in Mesquite is the great pair, because I will explain, I guess, about Mesquite later. But it's like everything we do should be inspired from where we are. And by this, I mean the geography. Israel doesn't have the biggest desert or the tallest mountain, but we have desert, mountain, and a beach in like 1 hour drive, which is ridiculous. And the culture, the 72 different cultures living in Israel, it's chaotic. Sharon is half Moroccan, half Turkish, married to a half Russian, half Polish guy. The kid's going to be a mess for sure, but it's like, and the history and everything, it's so unique. So if this is unique on the inspiration level, we can definitely compete with other countries, the London and Paris of the world, definitely this. On the rest.
Can I jump in and ask a question? Because I got curious here. When you say about identity of fashion in Israel, what is you would say there's this identity? Because we can relate, Italian fashion, you can really relate, and you can see identity. You can see fashion, French fashion. I think this is really going away in some way, as we are connected, and we don't feel like there's but there's still an identity. You can see when it's French, and you can see when it's Italian, and even you can see when Brazilian, because in Brazil we're very sensual, we're very skin, we're very. How would you say that there's an identity for Israeli fashion?
I think it's very complex in a sense, and there are two reasons, as much as I see, of course, it's only my opinion. First, Israel is a young country, compared to Brazil and those countries who have a vast tradition, different categories of vast tradition. So in Israel, if you'd ask like 10 years ago, nobody tried to do something which is related to the sources of inspiration of Israel. Everybody would try to look outside of Israel and to imagine and to want to be like this and this and this. And I think, and it's not only because of us, of course, at Mosquito, but in the last 10 years, there's starting to be a change. A lot of people are talking about the history and going to the future, based on the history, which is, I think, is the right way to do. Otherwise, if you didn't learn from what happened in the past, you cannot grow faster. But going back to your question, I would say that in Israel, first, there is a lot of similarities to Brazil, I think. All my Brazilian friends, at least, say that Israelis are Brazilian and the same because of the weather, because of the culture, because of the openness and the language, even the language is a bit. But for me, it's mostly about the combination, the chaos in a sense, which is very Israeli for good and for bad, again, all over the things. And I guess a few Israelis, so you can relate maybe. There is the fact that, from one hand, it's like this, and it's a flip-flop country. All of us are wearing Havaianas and going to the beach, and are very jeans and very casual. So, but in the evening, people invest a lot in evening dresses. So fabrics are very soft. Silhouettes are very, very, comfortable, and very resort kind of a thing. So it's based both on the weather, about the history and culture, but it's a lot of combination. And I think it's all starting from the 72 different cultures living together, which is ridiculous. They're married together, everything, there's no ghetto in a sense of really differentiating between. It's becoming a big mess, but it's very interesting. You can find a Palestinian embroidery on a sweatshirt. You can find some crazy prints from the
that's
Bible.
great for you. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
One of my favorites brands for the more contemporary lines, Holy Land. They call themselves Holy Land. They're the most edgy, coolest brand, but it's the combinations. You take the Holy Land kind of phrases and bring it into super cool graphics, and and again, there's a lot of examples, but there is no one Israeli fashion which you can easily relate, for good and for bad.
I think it's too young. Israel is a very young country. Like I was there in 2019, and I was really looking into the fashion and people and retail and what people were wearing. In Tel Aviv, everybody wears black, which is funny, even in summer. And it's very casual. I wrote down like 3 words for Israel fashion: simplicity, functionality, and pared down. It's not a show-off country. Like people are just like, it needs to be easy, functional, and comfortable. And so I feel like once designers and the culture emerges on creating this style that's not to show off to others, it's much more about the self and the expression of like the living in a country with so many conflicts and so much history. People are not going to be like in Mexico with the women with the jewelry and the hairs and the furs. It's not about that. It's about functionality, and it's like it's a country that it's a military country. Like everybody went to the army, so like they need things to work. So I think that's why fashion is not so developed in Israel, because it sounds superfluous. But it's once you find the match between style and something that's functional, then you're gonna get the Israeli formula for fashion.
But
makes sense,
Natalie, and I absolutely agree with all of your thoughts. And I think one of the best examples, I think, again, personally, the desert coat, which is the most iconic piece of Maskit, designed in the 60s, is designed or inspired based off the Bedouin communities in the desert of Israel. And nowadays, when we sell it all over the world, and I don't know, Sarah Jessica Parker is wearing it, nobody by no means think about the fact that it was very, Bedouin or stuff, everything is French or what. And going back to what you said about the practicality, it's very lean, it's very practical. It's in Israel, nothing can be too complicated because it's not working.
Yeah.
Not because we're not smart, but because it's not working. It's too complicated, so we're gonna.
I think it's because you're too smart to go with something that's just like an ornament. You know, like in Israel, nobody needs an ornament. They need to be ready. So it's a different.
But I think it's very much of also, as you two mentioned, it's a young country, and I think the identity is revolving all the time. You know, we have now crazy project with 3D printing on fabrics, super innovative, but we take the very, very old ornaments, you know, from Judaism. You know, we have a great also, you know, bridal collection and the mother of the bride, whatever. And we have the talit, the embroidery of the praying shawl. This is embroidery from, I don't know, hundreds of years ago. Never mind what kind of culture bought it, but the embroidery Israel, everybody was the same. Nobody's doing it by hand, and we're doing it. And if you would sit in a party, nobody can guess it's an ornament from the Judaism, because I think people should feel, you know, one of the words that we use a lot is authenticity. And this is something we try, you know, to find a lot. Authenticity is the new luxury, because not the big brands or the big logo. It's like something you cannot fake, something which is more unique. But still, it's still young. We need a lot of help from you guys, and to learn how to establish the identity faster.
We can tell you what not to do. We can tell you what not to do.
Yeah, Israel has nothing to do with big logos and ostentation. Israel is about like authenticity. I love this. Natalie, let's go back to the questions here. Who are your idols in the fashion world?
Well, I think I have a lot of people that I admire a lot. And of course, the big ones that I'll inspire, it's always surrounding our thoughts. Chanel, Stella McCartney, Nicolas Ghesquière, Phoebe Philo, McQueen. They're all fantastic. I think I would say that they are still my references now in Mesquite that I'm looking into. So it's so nice because the more you have, the richer your thoughts can be. So I really don't like cutting people and saying so sometimes I admire either the communication but not the product, or so it's really a puzzle that makes my references richer and richer. So I always like to add pieces in the puzzle, even if it's not the ultimate idol, because I really think it's very hard to find one that makes it all, but I really like the mix of them.
It's like Natalie is one of my fashion idols, because I admire the career and the vision and the trajectory, because whenever you buy fashion, it's all about the idea. Like, so Natalie is so consistent with Enkai store with the idea. So, you know, you're not buying a piece of cloth, you're buying a whole story, and it's always coming, and you know what it is. I'm curious to hear about you, Nir.
I will interrupt you one more time. I think we are a very tough audience, I guess, or tough participant. But I'm curious how Natalie got into the fashion world, because this is something we skipped, and I cannot.
No, you're not skipping. This is our next question. You're skipping.
Oh, sorry. So
I will. I was cut by this.
The next one. This is the next one.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So you want my answer first?
I want your answer for who are your idols in the fashion world.
I will use this excuse of mentioning Ruth. Ruth is. I will give an introduction about Ruth and why it's a very special, you know, time to answer the question. Ruth, and funny enough, she write it R-U-T without the H, so it's not Ruth, it's Ruth, because this is how her parents called her. And Ruth was the founder of Mesquite back then in 1954. And she established a company with the social entrepreneurship, in today's nice fancy buzzwords, with the idea to preserve the craftsmanship of the different cultures who came to Israel first, and second, to employ and to provide work for the different new immigrants who came to Israel. So it was a governmental company, weird enough, and she was working for the government managing the company. It was very successful, 2,000 employees, 10 stores, you know, Fifth Avenue store, selling to Berg of Goodman, Neiman Marcus, etc., etc. And Ruth was, actually, she passed away last week on Friday in the age of 103. And I think that definitely she's our muse and our inspiration, not only actually even because she was not a designer, but she was the entrepreneur behind it. And she did it in the most respected and modest way, which I appreciate personally very much. And she brought, in the times when Israel didn't know, they talked about wars, about food, about agriculture. She brought fashion and she brought culture with it. And she brought, the idea was to find the right people. So Mosquito was not only about fashion, it was really a lifestyle statement, from carpet to giftware to selling textile to Gio and Givenchy and Saint Laurent. So it was, when Israel was really very, very, very new, she was thinking about the big picture already. So unfortunately,
I have a new goal in life now. After you said, I have a new goal in my life. I want to be Ruth when I grow up.
Be careful what you wish for. You need to survive until the age of 103.
That's good for me. It sounds good for me. But I just love the way you say it.
It's funny when I was just mentioning it, in the funeral, that when I was driving with her in the city, because she was still driving until 3 years ago, which is a bit dangerous, but anyway. But when we were driving, all the streets in Israel were her friends. And I was making laughs that you're the only survival. This street, Ben Gurion is your friend. This and this, and everybody is a friend. It's like a living history in a sense. But I agree with you. She was very, and she was very much about peace process, not related to gender. Doesn't care about who's. And she was the first wife of Moshe Dayan, but she was never had problem with Arabs, and she was very, very left side, and she was always about people first and then all the rest. And she was really, really amazing. She said, I'm not feminist, I'm just who I am. Don't try to control my thoughts in the sense of getting together.
That's beautiful. Now Nir, we're gonna get the answers you wanted. Nathalie, can you tell us a little bit about the beginning of your path and your journey into the fashion world?
Sure. In the beginning, I really thought I come from a family business, and I was the third generation, and I was kind of pushed to go to the retail, and my grandfather had a lot of trust on me and really expected me to go and to follow in the retail, in the retail business. I'm sorry. And I really thought that I would have my way on the family business. But I was really much into art, architecture, fashion. I studied architecture. And I really thought, I'm going to work on retail. And I'm going to have fashion and architecture as a hobby. So one day I was thinking about, how do I run away from this family company? Because I admire them so much. They're so fantastic, but they're so big. They're grown up. What could I do best than they're doing? And besides that, I only see people coming outside from the family business when they have a big fight. I don't see they're like, oh, I want to do something else. And they end up in a very nice way. So I thought, I'm going to do everything I can to try having my own thing. And if I fail, I already know what I have to go. I have to go to the 5th floor on the office in São Caetano, and I'll be happy, but at least I tried. So I made a very, very embarrassing business plan, and I showed my father, which was a very great businessman. So I said, I need this amount. I'm going to create this. And in 2 years, if I'm not successful enough, I'll promise I'll be back on the 5th floor doing finance and working with TVs and refrigerators, and I'm going to love it anyway. So I had the retail on me, super strong, but I had fashion. So when I decided to create NK, it was the cross, like, raw, that's my sweet spot. It is retail and it is fashion. So I took all of my luggage that I have from all days conversation, all weekends conversation, they were about business and the family. So in a way, I really understood that, and I could create NK. So I created NK in 97, as my closet as a small addition of buying things that are relevant for fashion, not because of price, not because of it is the brand of the moment, but the look, the addition that I would do would be a very, very well done selection. So it started very small. And within 2 years, NK was already having its own space. And then I was courageous enough to say, Dad, thank you so much, but I'm on my own. And if everything fails, I'm okay with it. I'm gonna go in this path. So I think my first motivation was running away from something that I didn't want.
Wow.
And the second motivation was to fulfill my two passions. And I didn't even know that I had so much passion about retail. And it is funny because when you say about Ruth, I was never a designer. I was never a creator. And in fact, I do believe that there are so many fantastic creators, but I don't have this imagination. My eyes are in a business-wise way.
It's funny that there aren't many Jewish designers, creators. Jewish are all about the retail. We're all about the shop. We're all about the commerce. But
the money
How do you make money out of this?
This is why it's hard to have like a fashion identity in Israel, because it's all about the retail. It's not about the creation. It's funny, but and I think Judaism is about necessity, basic needs, because of the story of our people, and the luxury fashion. It's not a basic need, right? So, but we can evolve into that, and I think your stories are so much aligned with like what the future can bring and what we can like globally create and be creative about it and do something that has meaning, which is something that I talk to Natalie a lot and I identify with this. It needs to have meaning. It needs to be for a lifetime. It needs to be, whenever you get all these values into fashion, because those values are not the Jewish values, they're values of the fashion industry. But once we get something that people connect, that's family, goes from generation to generation, past quality, craftsmanship, and then I think we're going to have Israeli designers global with a global force.
I think you're right. And again, going back to the question you previously asked me, I think, it's a challenge all over the world. A lot of the designers are artists in a sense, and artists sometimes is not correlated with the business side, I would say gently. And and I think that in Israel, it's even worse in a sense that it's a small country. Neighbors are very challenging, so you cannot easily do business, in a sense. And Israelis are, having a major progress, but it's going to take a while until they're going to learn how to tell their story. Also as a country, but also especially as a designer, as a one-man show designer. And, when we just launched, one of the COVID issues we had, the people wear less clothes, especially less, nicer clothes or less homewear and more, less out, evening wear and more homewear, is that we did matana, which is a gift in Hebrew. And we did a collection based only on homeware, like a product design, like ceramics, metals, all coasters, everything for the home. And we learned there is so many things that people are doing, like a one-man show, two-man show craftsmanship, but they cannot tell their story. They cannot expand it. They cannot do retail. They're two, artists. But it's so definitely there is a lot of progress to be done, I guess.
Okay. Nir, has Judaism influenced anything in your life, in your career? I'm gonna give this to you first, and then Natalie with the same question.
I'm sure it's influenced on a lot of things, mainly about the education or the old times. But from the design point of view, yes, it's part of our inspiration at Moskid. Personally, I think it's always, I don't know why, but there is always about Judaism, you need to work harder than all the rest. You need to do more. You need to do it more quick. I remember when I discharged from the army, so all the people are already doing a lot of stuff. I need to go quickly. I didn't even take a vacation. So it's like always a rush to do stuff, which is a good news and bad news. But but I think this is, my point. There is a lot of points about culture, about values, about, all sorts of stuff that but I will not take all the time for a long answer. Natalie.
How about you, Natalie? How has Judaism influenced your life and your career?
I think there's two ways, in a tangible way and a not tangible way. The non-tangible way, of course, the choices, the values, the ethics, the things that are made to last, the family thing, the putting the business into the heart of the family. So I think Judaism had brought me a lot of this. But in the tangible way, I would say that I love the way Judaism looks and the culture looks. And of course, my best combination is black and white, and it's going to be forever. And I think Judaism brings it in such a beautiful way. It's so beautiful to see. It's so, I really love to see the tradition that how people wear the Hasidic. I think it's beautiful. There's so much history, culture, tradition, and I love that. I like very much tailored things. I don't like too much slouchy. And I think Judaism had this thing that is very rigid, that it's very tight.
The rabbis have the best clothes. Oh my God! When I see the rabbis, who did this suit? Who cut these pants? I don't find this in retail. Like where? Everywhere in the world. If it's New York, if it's in Brooklyn, or even in Jardins in São Paulo, it's a neighborhood. Oh my God! I say, look at these pants, the fabric. Oh my God.
Yes, I think that it's so beautiful and I think it's a discipline of wearing. And I love that. It's very disciplined. And I really love that. Because sometimes I feel that fashion is sliding to a place that is like, oh, it's okay. It's really not that important. But when I find that this tells a lot about you and a lot about your choices and a lot about the respect with other and a lot about tradition, I love it. So that's the tangible way Judaism has influenced me.
Nice.
Okay. Have you guys ever suffered any kind of prejudice of any kind? And have it affected your life somehow?
I must admit, it sounds weird maybe, but I must admit, and maybe because we are Israelis, so we are less sensitive maybe to the small, details. But no, I never felt, not even, working abroad a lot, never in my life felt something like this. Again, I didn't grow up outside of Israel, so maybe it's easier. But so for good and for bad, no.
How about you? It's a conversation I have with my grandmother. Asks me all the time, do they know you're Jewish? Because when she was growing up, like people were getting killed in Europe and she was living in Bahia. So she was always terrified that people knew she was Jewish. But I think we live in a time now that we don't feel threatened for being Jewish, right?
I felt the same. I mean, especially in Brazil, it's a very warm place and we have a lot of issues, but the religious issue, it's not an issue here. So it's a very open country for a lot of cultures, especially for religions. But sometimes it feels like I said it's like a joke, but I feel that it's interesting joke. Sometimes they'll say, I'll get into a negotiation, and people that they work with me, they know that I can be tough in negotiations. They say, I'm not even going to start. She's a woman and she's Jewish. So I take this as a compliment. But sometimes it appears like, oh, so we're going to negotiate like a rent here, so that we're negotiating everything. So I said, no, please put me to talk to anyone in the company but Natalie. So Natalie, it's very tough to negotiate. She's Jewish. So I think it's a compliment.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Never even thought.
In any collection, let's go near now. In any collection or in the sketches that you create, have you ever had a creation linked to religion?
Yes, I think the example I gave before, I will elaborate a bit. When we went 6 years ago or so to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, part of the research about the collection, seeing all the Jewish clothes, it's for me, it's hard to say Jewish clothes, sounds weird, but again, we're going to do the religious part of it, the clothing. There is a nice section about it in the Israel Museum. And we saw the technique of the talit, the prayer shawl, and we were amazed. We tried to research in Bnei Brak and Jerusalem and all the religious places, couldn't find nobody who is doing it by hand anymore. And in Maskit, in the first line of Maskit, we do everything by hand. No embroidery is done by machine.
Everything's made in Israel. Like you have
everything is made in Israel, and the Maskit line, everything is a handwork.
Where is the factory? Do you have factories in Israel?
Yeah, we have our own atelier in-house.
Where is it? In Tel Aviv? No.
Tel Aviv, yeah. Everything in Tel Aviv. We are very.
Next time in Israel, Nir, I'm gonna visit. And
be careful.
I had to cancel my ticket because of the COVID, and I didn't go. But now I'm staying here. I'm gonna visit. I really want to.
It's my honor and pleasure to host you too, ASAP, because it's so fun here, and with this COVID is like ruining everything. But anyway,
I have an open ticket. I mean, I had to cancel my ticket. I have now.
You're serious?
Latam does the São Paulo Tel Aviv flight. I was supposed to go in June for my sister's 40th birthday. She lives in Israel, and unfortunately I couldn't be with her. But I have my open ticket. So as soon as the borders are open and we're in a better place, my first destination is Israel. My ticket's paid already.
So it's going to be my honor and pleasure. We have our Maskit house which is closed now, unfortunately, because of the lockdown. But we have like a smallish museum, a nice showroom. All the atelier is open to the public, like an open kitchen kind of, so people can see the craftsmanship, not like a tourist attraction, but like a real, we're very proud of our craftsmanship. So why not showing off, in a nice way? So a lot of people come. And I forgot your previous question, but
I'll go to my question.
No, sorry if I didn't answer.
You answered my question. If you link to religion, the connections. Let's do the same question to Nathalie. Nathalie, have you ever linked any collection to religion?
No, never, not literally, but I think the fit is always present on the collections. The tailoring, it's always present in the collection, and the combination colors are always on the collection. But I never did something specific to Judaism, which is a great idea.
We're going to do a collaboration now. We find an excuse, something should find some Israeli excuse to travel. And
please, Joka, we can go to work.
Yeah, no, we are going to do this bridge. This conversation is very interesting. We have 10 more minutes, and there are so many questions I want to ask you guys. So I'm going to choose the ones that are broader. I think are going to be part of this conversation. Nathalie, tell us a remarkable story of your life with a famous person in the fashion world.
I really have a hard time to think that I'm famous in the fashion world.
Tell us a story that you lived with a famous person that's not you, with a famous person in the fashion world, like that you lived with.
Oh, okay.
Famous designer or.
Oh, I had a lot.
Something remarkable.
Every time we go to the showrooms and we meet a lot of people, when we meet the designers, and everyone's dying to come to Brazil. So it's funny because every time you go to the showrooms, they said, can you please talk to the managers and say that we have to visit Brazil? And one day I was talking to the girls at Stella McCartney, and she shows up and she said, Natalie, would you come we're going to do a small party on the end of the show, which is going to be very small. And my team, I don't know why, they want to travel to Brazil so bad. I say, yeah, it's fantastic. You should come. So next day we scheduled a call and she said, okay, I'm going to go. And I really want this place to escape. So she went to this island in Angra dos Reis and she came to the shop. And we arranged her to do a collaboration at CNA. And by the end of the day, we were having like this fantastic journey during the week. And she said, you know what? I have to tell you, I really want a plastic surgeon. in Brazil. That's what you're famous for. And I said, really, that's something that I cannot help you with. And that's funny because we really thought that she really wanted to know the nature. And she said, I want to go for plastic surgery. So that was so funny. I really didn't expect that.
How about you, Nir? Did you ever have an experience with someone remarkable in fashion?
Yes, we had a few funny. I think the most, I would say, it's always fun to find, very celebrities and stuff that see how human and how nice they are. It's a good surprise. Not always happening, but it's a good surprise. So we had a very nice surprising visit in the show one day. We were closed. Actually, Sharon was there by coincidence, and somebody knocked on the door and said, "Can you open?" She's going to open, just to say, "Okay, we are closed. I'm just here working on Saturday. It's not really, an open day here in Israel." And Sarah Jessica Parker was there. She was just with a guide, and said, "Can I pop in and see?" And with the guide and the whole group and stuff. She was so nice, and she sat for almost 2 hours hearing the story of Mesquite, and learning and asking tons of questions about the history, about root, about the Bedouin, about the local everything. And she also became a close customer, and she insisted to pay, and she wanted to wear the clothes, and we kept the relationship, and she was wearing few of her clothes to the most posh event she had with the Harry Potter premiere and stuff. So, and she's she's the one who replied for her post on Instagram, and she's so human person and modest that is, for us, it was such an amazing experience to know her and to really share with her the Mesquite story.
That's so interesting. Well, let's go to our final question that I think we can embrace, like some positivity and inspiration that we all need right now, and sharing experiences with how has this pandemic and moment we're living in affected your life, business. And I think you both have so amazing business. What can you share of lessons learned that you think you want to spread the message? I think this is a nice way for us to finish this conversation.
Should I start? Okay. So first question, the optimistic question about the COVID. To relate COVID with optimism is very, very is a big challenge. But I think what happened to us is that 10 months ago, I just came actually from New York, because we are doing a lot of presentation about the brands and stuff. And actually I became ill for 2 weeks. I guess it was COVID, but I didn't test it even, so who knows. But anyway, so we decided that it's going to take a while, and we found this as an excuse to invest in a lot of stuff that we didn't have the time for a while to invest in. Anything from the online platform that we had, but didn't really, was not well established, to the more interesting part, which is, as I said, it's Matana, the product department that we established and is working very well. It's nice and growing. So I guess it's about finding alternative. And the other thing we are doing, we invested a lot in research and development in design in order to be ready for the day after, because I think that from various reasons, we were very down to earth even before the COVID. So, our partner always told us, if you're sleeping on the floor, you're never going to fall out of bed. So we always very, very practical, very, down to earth. We're not extreme on most of the things. So I guess in COVID, we learned a lot of modesty, and we had the time to invest in the future, and we are looking forward to the new future, which we're going to think will be very similar, but more clean, more sustainable, less flashy in a way. So we're very optimistic. And with regards to lesson learned, there is a lot, but if I would have to choose one, I would say that one of the most interesting things for me is the entrepreneurial side. And I think that Mesquite is a great example of, in a sense, the fact that you can dream big, and we're not big yet, but the idea of taking something with a vast history and not afraid to revive it with a lot of criticism and a lot of, one of the things that I enjoyed beforehand when I did startups is like you can start in your garage, nobody cares. You can build it from there. In Mesquite, the name and the recognition, again, mainly in Israel and a bit about, outside of Israel, was very strong. And I think it's like the Nike phrase, just do it.
Great. Natalie, lessons learned and message to share for the present moment.
I feel that we had to put in practice everything that we've learned in 20 years in the fashion business. I feel that we've been rehearsing for 20 years and that we had to put on the show everything that we've ever learned. So I think probably Jaka, we have the 3 words that they describe NK for all the actions that we take, which is to see, to feel, and to care. And that was like the big final, to see if we're really what we say and what we think we are. So it was a test of resistance. And we really, first things first, we thought we're going to take care of our people. And we did everything that we had to take care of the people, to keep the jobs and to keep people working. So we created a company, an action saying we're all salespeople. So for 200 people that we have, they all created code so they could sell online, from marketing people to the drivers from NK to people that they work in the factory. So they all had a code and they all could sell online, so they could get some revenue and the salary they had. So the second thing, we invited friends. So we really engaged the community that they're very engaged to NK. So they could be salespeople. And then we engaged people from the fashion world that they were totally out of jobs. So suddenly designers or producers or magazines or journalists, they became salespeople for NK. But they became salespeople, not just say they could donate the commission, or they could earn it as a monthly earn. So it's nice because we really engaged the community, and we saw that's nice. That's how NK is part of their lives, and not just, we're not a product company. We're not making out products. We're telling stories. So first, then we took our people, and then we engaged the community, and then we started to look into our own strategies and see how do you make sure that our 3 words are put in practice. So we opened our inventory, the fabric inventory, and we sold at very, very low prices to small companies, small producers, so they could keep on going, because we really had a hard time having fabrics and everything that's related to fashion, because we couldn't get anywhere. So we helped these little communities to survive during the COVID. And then we created a lot of inside actions, the upcycling, that because we bought 800 pieces of clothing from NK, and we gave to 3 designers in Brazil, very famous designers, so they could recreate, and then we sell the pieces again. And it was very successful. We did 3 collaborations with designers, and then we sold at a shop, and the money was reverted to people that they have their own communities for social work. So I do understand that NK is a part of this engine, and that's what I learned the most, that we are not here making clothes. We're doing history, we're telling stories, we're making fashion memory, and we have our responsibility on impact people's lives. And that was very surprising to see how we went through this tough times, doing the homework that we've been training and rehearsing for 20 years.
Thank you, Natalie. Well, I'm so inspired with this conversation. I'm so grateful with this invitation to be here with you guys today. mediate this talk, because fashion and Judaism and then all these connections. And I remember the first time I went to Israel as an adult. I was 21, and in Brazil we are all about, like Natalie was saying, style is all about sensuality and I don't know. It's about summer. We see things. We're Jewish living in Brazil. We see it differently. And then I went to Israel, and I was 21, and I went camping with my cousin and 6 of his friends. And we got to the camping at the Nile River, which for me was wow, because it was like something I studied my whole life, but I'd never seen it. And we got to the camping, I didn't know how to do anything. And they were, in 5 minutes, they have the tent, they had everything ready. They were so prepared. And I felt so stupid because I didn't go to the army. Like I went to business school, and I understood a lot about this. So bringing like this fashion sensibility of something that's so not necessary, like in Israel, where everybody fights for their lives and their families every day, and everybody has this mindset, no matter what background they are from, how wealthy they are, it's different. So I think like the future to bring this fashion sense and spirit to Israel is something that I'm going to be happy to see it grows, because it's such a new country. And I think when it comes, it's going to be the best. Like,
again, going back to what you said now, I think the biggest change in Israel nowadays, and it's something that, got into my mind in the last 2 years, Israel in the past used to innovate in order to survive. Food, army stuff, agriculture, never mind. Now Israel is innovating to thrive. And this is a major difference. You can see, TV series coming from Israel, and, a few of them are army, Fauda, but also Shtisel and a few other, different Netflix kind of, genres. And you can see music coming from Israel, and stuff which Israel in the 10 years ago would never innovate, And now, like the Neta Barzilai and a few others, now I think Israel is ready to innovate, to thrive. And fashion is part of it. You can see food scene in Israel is, the highest level in Paris, London, and New York is Israeli chefs nowadays. So it's like, I think it's starting, and we're gonna, need to help Israel to push things around, because we are young and we don't have time. We need to grow faster, otherwise we're gonna be old. And
the new generation, the high-tech generation, is amazing, and the young people from Israel who don't have as much baggage and so much trauma, and are very high-tech and very global, and I think we're gonna see some great things. I'm excited to see the future. This conversation made me very happy.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, George, for everything. It was great fun and pleasure and honor.
Thank you so much. We hope you can see Bridget here, and I hope this conversation doesn't end here. We hope we can meet soon. We can exchange our contacts, and hope you can get always in touch. And if you come to Brazil, it's going to be a pleasure to have you.
Tel Aviv. Let's make
I think we need to go.
Tel Aviv.
I think we need to do like a special conference in Tel Aviv, and you two should come, because it's a must. It's a business-wise.